Okay. Sounds like we're started. I'm going to wait for somebody to get in. Okay, so if you are viewing this, which is a single person, so if you're watching, it's all on you. Can you hear? Can you see? Because I'm not starting until that is the case. So please, do your role. And meanwhile, I'll set up. Okay, thank you. Thank you for doing your part. Okay, let's start the show, people. So, for anybody new, which I don't know, I'm streaming Nodevember every day because I've never finished, and I'm finishing this year. And the issue is, what I used to do is I tried to make a tutorial for every post. So imagine trying to make 30 edited videos once a day while also doing other stuff like sponsorship obligations. So here's the situation, people. The situation is I do every single one a day early. That's going to give me this advantage where if I miss a day, I can like catch up. So I'm actually going to do prompt number 2, even though it's November 1st. And that prompt is going to be fire. And I know, fire simulation, right? We make a fire simulator using grids and Blender. Yeah, but that's like the poor man's solution. So I've come up with something much more novel. And before I tell you what that's going to be and spoil it, let's go over yesterday's render. The prompt was pumpkin. And this is what I came up with. There's some aspects of it I'm not happy with. I feel like this stem kind of going back and forth could have been done nicer because it's using the bumpiness of the road, which is quite bumpy. So I probably should have smoothed that somehow or used a noise texture. But overall, very cool. I haven't seen anything like this one. Okay, so that's what we did last time. I'm just going to pop out the chat so that I can do it. And even though I don't expect anybody to do this, I saw there's a goal in the super chat thing. So let me do that. Goal amount. How much should we shill? 10 super chat. Super chat colors and counts. Okay. Timer. 3 hours. That's how long it will take. Share how you'll celebrate. Literally nothing. Okay, let's see how that works. Okay, I believe there should be a goal. If I didn't know the prompt for that was pumpkin, I honestly wouldn't tell what that render is. Bad. Bad. It's a good render. Okay, so last time what I did is I had this like chat on top, and that became a nuisance in the sense I had to keep moving it, even though I had it overlaid on top. So this time, I'm not going to do that. Okay. So let's get everything cooking. Okay. So like I said, the prompt for today is going to be, well, that's a thumbnail, is going to be fire. And instead of doing a fire simulation, I want to focus on the effects of a fire. Is it burning down a forest? Is it, I don't know. Well, what I decided, if you look at my desktop, is I downloaded a few images of a roasted marshmallow. So I want to do a simulation in geometry nodes where a marshmallow is being rotated on a stick, and hopefully I can realistically get this burning slash golden slash boiling thing. One obvious way to do that is to kind of create a parameter that is kind of like the amount that it's cooked, and that would like expose a material, and maybe that is what I'll do. But I really like, what I think is cool about this is the bumpiness. So that's what I want to emulate. Okay. So let us get started. The first thing I want to do is I want to make a kind of like an area for our viewing. So let's see. Can I rename this F2? Nope, that's not how that works. Modeling, duplicate, blah, 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 blah. I don't know if I can delete it. Can I just make a new one with a name? Clearly, at some point, I figured it out because I made a workspace called tutorial. Let's see. So if I make a modeling one, aha, I just double click. Okay, great. So this one is going to be our reference, and its only goal is to show images. So I'm just going to get this as a reference. I'm going to get this as a reference. This one. And last, but certainly not least. Oh, I didn't know snapping was always there. That was cool. Certainly not least, this one. And in fact, this one's probably going to be the most informative in terms of like burning and like broiling it. So let's get these zoomed in the way we like. Okay. So I think the first order of business is obviously to just get a marshmallow rotating. What we do with that is a different story. Different story. So, okay. I got my good old tutorial workspace. Okay. So the first thing we need to do, like I said, is to make a marshmallow. A marshmallow is kind of just like a cylinder that's been smoothed out. So let's see what that looks like. Let's get out of orthographic mode. Oh, I have allergies, so I'm just going to try to clean this up one time. Use a bit of water. And then hopefully I don't need to do that again. Okay. So the cylinder, I need to be super high resolution because I want it to be smooth, and I'm only doing this operation once, so I may as well go ham. That is our cylinder, and then to turn it into a marshmallow, probably volumetrics is the way to go. So mesh to SDF I've been loving. I'm using 5.0 if you don't have this. And then grid to mesh. In my experience, I found this to be faster than the volume to mesh, mesh to volume workflow, which I think is identical to a density grid. Don't know why, but that's the case. So let's get a super high resolution marshmallow. I found that dropping the threshold is quite nice at a high voxel count. Okay. And I could kind of deform this to start, or I could have the deformation be solely based on the fire. Okay, what is the general shape? The general shape is kind of like shorter than you'd think and kind of the widest at the center. Easy enough. Well, let's try to do some SDF stuff before we just, manipulate the geometry instead. So grid median, I know, is essentially a smoother, which I kind of like. I like the look of that. And then what else do we got? SDF offset. I know, and let's get rid of this so I can have options. I know offset you can think of as basically an expander, which in this case would smooth this out. So let's consider that. I think that's better, right? What else do we got? SDF Fillet. Let's try that, just so I know my options. Nope, that's not the one to use. And I wonder if I can add noise. What's the Laplacian? Unclear. So the first thing I need to do is just add a low frequency pass of noise just to start. Now, it would be super cool. It'd be super cool to just do this with SDFs. I don't know if I can, but if I was to, I'd do SDF Boolean. This is kind of the math node, in a way, of the grid Booleans. And for the grid, what I need to do is I need to make a grid that has randomness. That randomness can be, it could be a noise, it could be whatever. Grid, what do we got? Field to grid might be the way to go. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to use our input right here as the topology. So imagine that there is a grid right here. I'm going to use that as the topology such that I can load any field, right? Noise texture. Let's see what that does. Yeah. Yeah, I think that works the way I think it does. So let's see. Union. Intersect. No. I wonder, I don't know if this is possible, but can I just add grids? Is that a thing I can do? I can. Okay, great. So I'm going to make a low frequency noise. The issue is this is going to somewhat break our SDF because it goes like negative to positive, but we can figure that out later. I'm going to map range so that I can control this, and I don't know if I want to make it bigger or smaller. Seems like I want to make it smaller. This might not be the way to go, but we'll think about it. What about a multiplication instead? Nope. Okay. The more I look at this, the more I realize not the way to go. But let's try, I know in the world of SDFs, you usually use like smooth minimums and maximums. No. Sometimes it's just not the way. It's a shame there's no official prompts this year. Yeah, it is. Well, thank you for Arendelle for at least making something, you know? Better than nothing. Not official, but better than nothing. Okay. The more I do this, the more I realize let's just make it simply. So we have our marshmallow. I want to distort that. Go to cgmatter.com to get free nodes like this one. You can just download my add-on, which will let you do that. Let's do a low scale at a low strength. And I'm talking about super low frequency detail. I want the true shape to be fully based on a simulation. That's pretty nice. And as per somebody's recommendation yesterday, I don't remember who that was, baking is going to be the way to go so that we are going much faster. And I guess one thing is it seems much easier to bake a mesh or more reliable than to bake a grid, I believe. I don't know if that's the case, but I'm going to bake this, and now this is going to be much more responsive than it was before. So, all of this can be our base marshmallow. And by the way, I'm posting all my things progressively as I go. I don't think I uploaded the first one yet because I'm a bit behind. But if I go to cgmatter.com, so by the way, free nodes are right here. If you're a member, you go here. Stay tuned for Nodevember. I'm going to be live streaming. So this isn't populated yet, but the goal, I don't think this link does anything, is to actually post these things here. Oh, 10 more days until 5.0. I did not know that. Very excited because right now what I'm doing is I'm putting 5.0 in the titles of my YouTube videos, which turns out gets more clicks and is true because I am using 5.0, but I'm glad for that to be like the standard. Okay, so we got our base marshmallow. Do I want to blur position? Again, cgmatter.com. I can. It doesn't seem to really matter just because about the sheer amount of geo, perhaps. I mean, it does something. Maybe like 12 iterations. So before, after. Yeah, I think that's good because I just want that low res detail. And then as for parameters, just in case I want to change it later, especially the distortion, I'm going to add strength, scale, detail, roughness, and all of that is going to live under the umbrella of distortion controls. Let's make that bigger. One thing that would be nice is if I could like shift click select a bunch of parameters so that I can move them all at once. That'd be great. So let's make that bigger. That's our distortion. And I think it would also be nice to have controls over our blurring. And I don't need to get too fancy with that. Oh, and of course the voxel size, but I'm not going to mess with that right now since I have this all baked. Okay, so here we have our base marshmallow. The next order of business is I want to make a randomizer that basically animates its rotation. Now, this can be kind of dumb in the sense that it just rotates based on a animated noise, or it can be smart in the sense that if I look at a marshmallow and I've cooked part of it, the person would then flip it. So they'd look for the least cooked area and kind of prioritize that to get an even one. Interesting idea. I don't know if I'm going to go for it. But to start, I'm going to transform geometry on the x-axis by 90 degrees. And we'll make the stick later. Okay, that looks good. And then maybe another transform geometry. And this one's the one that's going to be responsible for the turning. And like kind of like a low res way to do this is you use a noise texture, one dimensional, and you, for example, have this rotate on the y axis depending on that. So, you know, as it animates, it rotates, and you'd make that low res. You could do that, but you're going to see the issue is it's almost going to be centered at a certain rotation and just kind of go left and right. Whereas I want the possibility for it to turn all the way around without just multiplying this by a big number. So the way you would approach that is you want this to be additive rotation, not just the rotation. So I'm going to add a simulation, which I will be using anyways. And that simulation is going to transform, and that basically means it's going to it's going to add because it takes some rotation. That's for the next frame. It adds some contribution. So right now, it should just rotate at a constant speed. The reason this makes sense is the noise has a single value, and that value is going to be the same for every iteration. So this is something that I need changed over time. time node, cgmatter.com. And this is going to vary it over time with a certain speed. Okay, so now this is varying. It's hard to tell because it's going so fast. And maybe we can scale the contribution of this. How strong is the rotation by like the delta t maybe. So let's see, it's rotating this way, and then I want it to go the other way potentially. Do I need to bump up the speed here? Oh, for it to go either way, I need to turn off normalize so it can be positive or negative. Yeah. So now this is more additive. Great. I'm going to slow this down. So this can be seen as the quality of our rotation. Like, is it jittery? Is it detailed? Is it whatever? Became a member. It's actually so worth it. Damn right, Jazz. I swear I didn't make an account to post that. That's somebody's true opinion. So that's the quality of it, and then here I can have the quantity of it. So yeah. So you can see how this is kind of like much more than just kind of like setting the noise, the rotation to a noise. I like that. And then again, the quality of it, I would lower the detail so it's not as, you know, and maybe like bring down the speed. And for this, I'm going to make a lot of frames because this is going to be a slow roast, literally. Okay, so it's going like that. It's rotating. Does it ever go negative? It does. Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. We can control that later. So this is something I want to clean up. So all of this can be seen as our rotation. And then inside of here, we are rotating our marshmallow at some delta time. And I want to be able to control that based on some parameters. So this one is going to be the strength of the rotation, as we know. This one's going to be kind of the speed, not really. It's more so the animation, the noise speed. It's kind of a good way to think about it. And I think that's all we need. Like, I don't need the detail slider or anything. I think that covers our bases. By the way, I love how well this compresses now. It's so nice. It's legible. It stacks well. It's not those rounded things. Okay, there we go. By the way, I should probably name this entire thing Nodevember Day 2. And then flip DT to be on top, apparently. Okay, nice. So, what do we got? We got a marshmallow that is rotating. Are the streams going to stay in this channel? I think so. Although sometimes I just randomly upload to CG Matter instead. Why? Who knows? Okay. So we got this rotating. Again, the stick is to follow. It's as simple as basically adding a curved line that we're going to thicken and add some noise to the radius so that it looks more like a stick. But now what we need is we need the fire. And really, the composition of this, and this is important. So this is what's going to be different about mine versus what I assume most people are going to do. Is I'm actually just going to show the marshmallow, and the fire is going to be implied by having some light flickering and just some smoke, because smoke is much easier to fake than actually simulating fire. So all we need is the effects of the fire, not necessarily, what it's doing, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to open up the properties so that I can modify the camera. So far I've been doing 4:3 renders, and that's been treating me well. So 1920 times 3 divided by 4, that's just to calculate the thing. Okay. And I've also been setting my cameras to orthographic just because I like the way that looks. Next order of business, like I said, is we need to imply fire. And that fire, its effects is basically pushing things off of the normal and darkening it. So to me, the obvious thing is going to be making a burnt parameter, or how much it's cooked. And that also, again, pushes off the normal. Maybe it makes it droop, anything like that. And you can almost see its contribution as points, right? It's kind of boiled. So instead of the fire just kind of applying a noise, which maybe is what we'll do, what if there's kind of like a point cloud, right, coming from below? And if a point hits the marshmallow, then it has to expand. And then the point deletes itself. That seems like a way to go. So let's just kind of prototype this. I'm going to make a grid. And that grid is going to be beneath the marshmallow. And it's basically going to be a fancy, well, not even a fancy emitter. It's just going to be a emitter. What it's going to be emitting is points over time randomly. So I'm going to distribute. You might think distribute points in grid is the way to go, but this is a different kind of grid. So distribute points on faces. I need more room here. Yeah, that's good. It needs to distribute and then join over time. It's going to be a simulation. It's not going to be this constant thing, although it could be. No, I won't do that. So in my simulation, can I control click? Yes, so I'm going to name this Marshmallow. So the marshmallow kind of goes again and again and again in the simulation. And then I'm going to also create a input for the points. So I'm going to join the points with their previous thing, which I'll explain in a moment. So I want you to imagine that we start off with 0 points, and then every iteration we join some, distribution of random points, which right now we need to view by doing that, which right now is just going to look like it makes points once and nothing else, but that's not true. If you look at the number of points, right now it's 8,000, every frame it grows. So it's actually spawning on top of itself, if that makes sense. So what I need to do is I need to randomize this over time. And maybe the simplest way to do a seed is I just look at the frame number. So every frame, it's going to be different. And now you can see it's populating. And because it populates so fast, we know that our density should probably be pretty low. In fact, like way lower. And then what these points do is over time, they travel up. I think very simply, just linearly. We don't need to have some like temperature thing where it like rises faster at the source and then it slows down, although we can have some noise. And then if it hits this, it will modify the marshmallow and then delete itself. Okay? So what that means is that I will consolidate. What that means is every frame, these points are going to move upwards by some quantity. It should probably be based on delta t, so it's frame rate agnostic in case we want to change that later, like that. Okay? And then on top of that, to kind of emulate this idea of a temperature field that has turbulence or whatever, I can also add just a little random contribution. So I'm going to add a noise texture. That noise texture is going to be right here. So right now it's going to be crazy. But its strength or its contribution, just like the other one, is going to be based on this delta time. There you go. So that's pretty good. I'm going to lower kind of like the scale of it so it's a bit smoother. And something that's interesting is, does it only contribute if the point hits, or what if it glides next to it? Does it kind of transfer the heat? Maybe. Maybe not. TBD. But I like that. And maybe each of these can have a random strength, kind of like how hot it is, which can be represented by a radius. But either way, so they're now moving randomly. And then we just need to see which ones are hit. And if they are hit, they need to delete themselves. So what is a hit particle? Well, the true way to do it is we check, is a particle on the interior? And if it's on the interior, it must have crossed. Kind of another way to do it, maybe a more useful way to do it, is we can look at a point right here. We cast a ray downward. So now we're not just seeing is a point on the interior by looking at the near surface. I cast downwards, and if it hits something, it probably went through the marshmallow. Now, of course, that isn't necessarily true, because if a heat particle somehow kind of went around, then this point right here would ray cast downwards and say it hit, but it didn't. But that's fine. I think that's our approximation. And what I like about that is it very simply tells us not did it hit, but where it hit. Okay? So I'm going to raycast towards the marshmallow at a -1. And if it is a hit, indeed, then I am going to delete that geometry. I'm going to delete that particle. So it's going to be a little hard to tell, but let's try. So we have our particles. Let's look at it this way. They go, they go, they go. And you're going to notice there's none in the interior. If you see a point passing, that means it's literally like behind it. And it deletes itself. Another thing it can do is it can actually stick onto the mesh, for example. How is it possible to put Gaussian splat PLY files in Blender with textures? There's an add-on for that. Okay, so now we know which ones are here, and those ones are the ones that add to the contribution of the temperature. So maybe for the base marshmallow, I start off by storing a cook, a cook attribute that represents how much is it cooked. That's going to start at 0. This is episode 1 of Breaking Bad. Cook is equal to 0. And then, how do I want to do this? Maybe it looks at the proximity to each of these, so it can look at that. And the proximity to one that hit would be quite big. Let me think about this a moment. I mean, it would be simpler to just see which ones hit and then roast based on that. No, this is fine. Okay, so before the deletion occurs, because the particles we delete are actually quite important. Those are the ones that are going to contribute the maximum amount of heat. For each point in the marshmallow, so literally it's geometry that's going to store the data, I want to find its nearest thing. And then based on that proximity or inverse proximity, close means high instead of small, add. Okay, so I'm going to sample the nearest, and this is again before the deletion. I'm going to sample the nearest point, and then, or could I just do proximity? Might be easier. So I'm going to look at the nearest point, which I don't know if that can be used that way. I assume it can. And then based on that distance, it will add some contribution for the burnt. So I'm going to store named attribute. Are you making a marshmallow that actually burns? Damn right I am. Damn fucking right. This is the end goal. What was I talking about? I look at the distance. I maybe take a inverse of it. So again, instead of 0 to 1, close means intense. So 1 to 0. I flip that. And then I add, which I should probably turn into a node in the future. That can take in an attribute and just kind of like increment it. I do have an increment node I added yesterday, but that's different. That's just to add one for iterations. I'm going to take this attribute of the cook, and then I'm going to add this, which we're going to need to, of course, play with. But if I look at the cook relative to this, it should start off at 0, and then let's see. There you go. And then you could see some of them kind of curl around, but as it rotates, it kind of does that. Okay, that's good. That's good. And maybe, again, each point, what is it closest to? Each point carries a temperature. So there's big particles that carry a lot of temperature. There's tiny particles. Let me set this to 0.1 just so it heats up 10 times slower. And we're probably going to make it way slower than that. But that's a good proof of concept. And do notice that this, even though it looks like it's clamped, can go higher. Can go higher than 1. So if I look at the vertices, you can see the cook goes up to here. A better way to visualize this is I do the field min max. So I can basically map range this between the minimum and maximum. That should also be a node. So from minimum to maximum of the attribute, 0 to 1. This is just for visualization. This will normalize. So it's not going to go pure white. We can actually see what it's doing. Next video is going to be turning where I mean, at some point I do want to simulate a neural network, so I guess you could say that's true. Okay. Beautiful, beautiful. Next thing I want to implement is I want to implement a contribution. One way to do that is I can store a noise field on the marshmallow itself that says how susceptible is it to being burnt. But, you know, what makes much more sense, of course, is each particle has a strength. Now, if we do that, geometry proximity is no longer going to cut it because it doesn't tell us which particle, like what index is the one that hits. It just tells us the distance. Although, is there like a... I feel like there was a new node, something weird. I don't remember what it was called. Space? I don't think that merged yet. There is a node coming that makes that interesting. But I guess another thing is we can also turn this into a grid that roasts it. But this is fine. This is fine. So the geometry proximity is not going to cut it, as I said. So I'm actually going to find the nearest point. What point is it specifically? So sample nearest is going to give me the nearest point of which I can get multiple things. One thing I would want to get is its position, because I still do need to know how far away is it. So I find the nearest point, I get its index, and then at that point, at that index, I find its position such that I can get the distance to the position of the marshmallow. So all of that, and I'll clean up now, is going to be a node group. And I could add some variance here in the sample position, but that's fine. So all of this is going to be the distance from our points. And then I also want to output its index. Well, I want to output its index in the sense that I want to know something about its attributes. So what I could do instead is I could actually, how do I say this? Is I could sample a different attribute. That attribute, of course, is going to be the radius. Why the radius? Because it's a very easy way to store data. Points have radius, and that radius can actually be its temperature, how big, how hot it is, really. So I want to sample its radius. Great. And that should also be outputted. And again, radius is just a different word for strength in this case. Okay, so this is going to be kind of like sample points or whatever we want to call it. And now what we can do is instead of going from like 0.1 to 0 or whatever, it can go from the radius to 0. I believe that makes sense. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't make sense. Kind of makes sense, because this is actually... Okay, wait, let's clean up shop. So this is the new distance. Don't need that. So this is just to see what counts, but maybe we then say how it counts, but then by what multiplier. Okay, and this is only useful if the radius is varied to begin with, right? Because if they're all the same radius, there's no point to all that. So as they spawn, we can randomize their radius. Should probably be smaller than that, but this is a good visual, where some points are big, some points are small, and that is going to affect their contribution. Now, it's going to be, I believe it's going to be kind of hard to tell, but let's try. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think what's doing it is you kind of see this unevenness and also this Voronoi. This Voronoi, by the way, is a consequence of finding the nearest point. That is what Voronoi is. So that I need to kind of work on. But actually, the fact that it's Voronoi is fine, because if I take this and I make its kind of distance where it counts much smaller, it's going to make little circles. Am I crazy? No, that is not what we want. We want this to be tiny. Because remember, it kind of makes that burnt dot looking thing. Yeah. Yeah. Now, one thing you might notice is even though this is high resolution, clearly it's not enough, since we're going to be sampling, like, very fine-grained detail. So maybe what we can do is for our base marshmallow, before we do the bake, I can take its voxel width and make that really tiny and then rebake. And that's fine because we only have to do it once, even though it's chunky. So you can see we do have 195,000 points, which actually isn't that big in the GeoNodes world. But now this is going to be much higher res. Yeah, and I think you can see that some points are not as effective as others. Another way we could have done this is we could have said the proximity is dependent on the radius. That way we could just multiply by a constant. So now what this is saying is it's saying only contribute if you're a certain distance away. I guess in a way that's almost more realistic. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so by the way, this actually makes a lot of sense because now you can see big and small circles, and that corresponds to big and tiny things. Now, of course, kind of the next order of business is adding many more points. I kind of like that, though. Yeah. How long will it be? However long it needs to be. Okay, so now we have heat. Another thing we could simulate, but I don't know if I want to, it might like ruin what we have going on, is we can take this and we can blur it. So the heat captures at a certain point, but it also kind of diffuses. So this is going to be way too much, but just kind of illustrate a point. So now we expect the heat to land, but then also kind of spread out. Okay, so let's see. You can see how these circles kind of fade over time. And in a way, we can use that as one pass. That can be our like kind of golden pass. And then the dots can be our like super burnt pass. But we're cooking a marshmallow. Let's put this to the test. Higher density. Way higher density. And if we have this many points, of course, we're going to need a cook speed. And maybe just for the visual, not for the simulation, but what happens after the simulation, I can set the radius to be much tinier just for the visual. So it's going to be the radius that it was, and then I multiply it by like a 1/10 or something. Or I divide by 10. Yeah, I do want this to be the golden map because the points that kind of land... No, maybe that's fine, actually. Maybe this is what I want. No way. Yes way. And again, like the name of the game is we have this, and ultimately what it's going to do is it's going to affect a material. But it should also affect the displacement in a way. So let's say we're on this frame right here, okay? So for a moment, I want you to imagine we have this in a frozen period of time. What should happen? What should happen is it burns, right? Does that make sense? So what I mean by that is it kind of, you know what I mean? Does that. Where did it go? Let me actually temporarily do a bake on this. And actually, I don't know if this is faster. I don't know if loading is faster, but I'm going to take our nodes and I'm going to simulate onto the disk. What that means is whatever it bakes, it's going to put in a folder instead of storing in the blend itself. So maybe it doesn't have to save into itself, and maybe that's somehow faster. But it also means that we have a button right here for this. So bake to disk. And it's actually quite fast. Oh, and. Kind of an obvious thing I'm glossing over is, let's go to our camera. One obvious thing I'm glossing over is at a certain point, well, they're not. What I'm trying to say is at a certain point, these particles are going to go up here and they're going to kind of keep going. And we don't need those because they're not going to hit the marshmallow. And in fact, all they can do is kind of mess things up because remember, we're ray casting to find if it's a hit. So if it eventually curls over and then detects, it might be an issue, although it's also distance-based, so maybe it doesn't matter. But I do want to call these. So actually, let's take care of that. So at a certain point, they should delete themselves. And that can be, you know, a height of 2 or whatever, or that can be procedural based on the height of the marshmallow, but whatever. Whatever, we'll do it ourselves. So I'm going to delete whatever I delete, and then on top of that, I'm going to delete anything that satisfies the condition that its position is bigger than something. Okay, you can see what I mean. Now, this is useful in the sense that it's going to simulate less points overall. And then another optimization is you can see we're kind of making a footprint that's too big. Right? Like a lot of these points, even with the turbulence, are just never going to get there. So temporarily, let's bump this up so we can see. And make our grid kind of... like there should be a bit of wiggle room, right? But even that is going to greatly reduce the number of particles we need to simulate. So let's see. It goes like that. It's going to burn it. And then eventually they'll fizzle out. Now, if you want to be super technical, what they can do is they can actually lose radius, lose heat over time. We're going to do that. But they can lose heat over time so that a particle that's way up here has kind of lost its heat to the atmosphere. So again, this is all radius based, which makes it easy because I can just scale the radius by like 0.95. It loses 5% every frame or whatever. Because I think heat diffusion is exponential. Let's see. Heat diffusion equation. The heat diffusion equation, also known as the heat equation, is the blah, blah, blah of the blah, blah, blah. I need the solution, not the differential equation. I think what this means is it's kind of based on a second derivative, something, something. What do I want? I want like the simple case. One dimensional. I will be live streaming the whole month, in theory. What about this? Temperature to ambient temperature, kind of like the room diffusion. So this is kind of what I mean, maybe, I'm not sure. I swear there's a name for this. Like some dude made it might have even been Newton, made like a simple differential equation for this. Oh, here we go. Newton's law of cooling. That's what it is. Newton's law of cooling. Go to college, kids. Newton's law of cooling. The temperature of a cooling substance, which we'll treat as our particles, is going to be the difference in temperature between what it is and the room, the forest, the outdoors. So we'll assume that's constant. So we just look at the temperature of the particle, an inverse exponential plus something. So what that means is it cools off exponentially. And the fact that it's an E, I don't care about. But what that means is if I multiply by like 0.9 and multiply by 0.9, it's roughly accurate as an idea. Okay, so before we implement that super sick idea, let's consolidate. So this is our point spawner. Point spawner. That point spawner should have control, not really of the X and Y, I don't really care, but the density for sure, how many points there are, and maybe the radius they begin with? They should never be 0. I think this is plenty. I think that's fine. Okay, so this is our point spawner that has a density. We have our marshmallow that's rotating. We raycast, blah, blah, blah. What's all this? All of this is going to be our turbulence. Well, it's going to be our motion and our turbulence. So let's turn all of that into a node group. So what is this input? It's dt, right? Yeah, dt and the points. Point movement. Okay, this is starting to be much more legible. We then sample the points. We then delete the points based on some criteria. So let's make that a node group as well. We can call this delete hit points, because again, what this does is it raycasts to basically approximate what has hit. And if it has hit, then delete it. So I mean, that's approximately correct. Are these flipped? No, that's pretty good. So marshmallow and then points. And I am eventually going to put the blend file on my website, which is why I'm actually part of the reason why I'm cleaning this up. cgmatter.com, also a place to get free nodes even if you're not a member. Link in the description. Okay, delete hit points. Then what happens? Then we do a update of the cooking attribute. And that definitely has parameters we care about. So the first one is the distance. The second one is the radius. Both of these are going to be manipulating or going in and out with the marshmallow. And now let's see, what do I need control over? I need control over the distance of effect. So what counts as a collision? Or as a transference? Sorry, 1 second. This can be called our threshold distance for what counts. I bet you're still smart after this stream. It's okay. And this is going to be, whoops, that is going to be our heat multiplier, so we can call that the strength. What else do we need control over? Definitely the blurring, which we can call diffusion, would kind of be the way to do it. And by the way, the reason that I feel fine compressing all these nodes is opening them up is still easy, but these I don't really intend to change. And that's kind of important. So, this one, yeah, let's have both of these. So this is our diffusion iterations, our diffusion weight. These are going to be put in panels, which I think in themselves do some renaming. So let's see. So if I just call this diffusion, what I mean is it will automatically call it iterations and weight instead of diffusion iterations and diffusion weight. I will, panel toggle. I will call this proximity, which is kind of what everything else is. So it's the distance, it's the radius, it's the threshold, it's the strength. Some of these didn't go in here. And that should definitely be above that. And maybe distance and radius should be at the top since they're just being fed in. Okay. So this is going to be called heat transfer, because that's what it does. It basically updates our cook parameter, because we indeed cooked. And then this one is very simply, remember the idea of this one is it deletes points that are like too high and won't ever affect anything, and just kind of add computation where we don't need it. This can be called our like Z call or something. Oh, we have 80 people. Well, just as I said that, we had 78. We almost had 80 people. Well, we did. That needs a parameter for the Z height threshold that says what is and is not deleted. And that's nice because we might be able to refine this a bit more and get this to simulate even faster, which I am interested in. So this is going to be called our Z call. Let's make it bigger just so it fits. It's day 2 because I want to make sure I finally actually do this well. And never have I finished a Nodevember. So I'm going at a day ahead of time. Okay. So let's read this. We have our marshmallow that I set the cook to 0. It rotates over time using a simulation zone. And then at the same time, we spawn points and join them with the previous ones. We move them upwards and shake them a little. We then want to do a heat transfer. So I say, what is the nearest point and what is its strength? And then I delete the ones that were hit, and then I call ones that are irrelevant. I mean, that's simple. That's great. And then we said the next thing I wanted to do that I didn't do before is I wanted heat dissipation using Newton's law of cooling. So what we can do is in our sample points, here we can do the diffusion. I mean, I kind of want this exposed. So let's do this. The radius, I'm going to modify. I'm going to modify the radius by multiplying it by some number less than 1. So if it's 0.95, for example, you can think of this as the particle losing 5% of heat every single time. Do I need that? I think this is fine, right? No, let's keep it simple. So I'm going to, after this, I'm going to set point radius. I'm just doing it on this branch because I think that's actually what makes sense. I take the radius that it was before, I multiply it by a dissipation value. So 0.5 is very extreme. So you're going to see we have these points and they instantly fizzle out. Even 0.95 is quite extreme. So you're going to see this and they fizzle out. And by the way, coincidentally, this is starting to look like a fire, and that's why. So I'm just going to call this, our dissipation. And then this, of course, needs to be an attribute. It's kind of like dissipation rate. Although it is kind of like the inverse because I'm keeping 95% of it. I'm not like dissipating 95% of it. So maybe we'll name it something else. So this can be our, it's kind of like what we keep. What does keeping? What's a word for keeping? Maybe our, like, stability. I'm open to suggestions. If anybody has a name for this, keeping the heat, what would you call it? Kind of like storage. While you guys cook on that, I'm going to go pee. When I come back, I want names. Okay. Okay, what do we, retention, I like that. What do we got? Restitution, retention, we have a lot of retention, absorption, the heat loss compensator. Okay, I like retention, that's a good one. So we'll call this retention. I will now. And by the way, I'm just going to plug, you already know it, cgmatter.com. Okay, so we have our retention, which, as I showed, should actually be quite high. So let's say it's 99%. Yeah, that way, if it happens to get up here and contribute to the burning of the sides, it won't, like, last forever. Maybe 2%, 0.98. And I do want to actually, we haven't visualized this in a hot moment. You get it? Okay. And I'm just setting the point radius to be like, let's say 5 times smaller, just for visual. Doesn't actually affect anything since it's after the simulation. So in the simulation, let's just run a bake. And I'm also interested to know what's the timing. So it's going to start off super fast because there's going to be no particles. And then it will grow, staying at around 40 milliseconds. That's not bad. Okay, let's run a bake on this bad boy. I would love a bake button here, by the way. Just like we have a bake button on the bake node. And the fact that now it's going to be transferring way less heat, of course, makes sense. But it also is how it, like, it's also like how it works. Usually you roast this slowly. And there is, by the way, there's going to be kind of like a side effect where if we take this marshmallow, which is rotating, but we also bring it like up and down, like the person's holding it unsteady, the lower it goes closer to the fire, the hotter it's going to burn because the radius is higher here. So you hold it to the fire, it's going to roast quite quickly, which we like. Okay. Let's see what we got. I'm liking the blurring. And we might need to look at some reference to be like, is this accurate? But I do feel like there's these hot spots. Okay. I do like that. I do like that. Maybe let's make the dissipation again, or the retention a little bit higher. What else did I notice? I mean, all that's fine, right? Like maybe we should get working on the material soon. Oh yeah, we need to actually have this affect something. So we'll do that in a second. Okay. So now that I changed the retention, I'm going to bake to disk one more time. But this time I'm going to what am I going to do? I'm going to have it actually do something. Okay, still going. Okay, done. So let's kind of go over, I guess, to the end. So what should this be doing? Well, it should be moving points, or like the marshmallow itself, in and outwards, is at least the idea. So we can literally just view the marshmallow, since that's all that matters right now. I'm going to be looking at its cook value, and then after the fact, because that's the beauty, we've done the heat transfer, although we should probably do it inside, now that I think about it. But whatever, let's just try it here. I'm going to offset based on the normal, so this is going to expand or contract or whatever. And how much that happens, of course, is going to be dependent on this cook. So let's see, it kind of does that, and then it kind of dissipates. Great, great. And I understand that it's looking chunky, but we can fix that. So like one way we could do that is we could multiply this even by 0.5, already makes this much more suitable. And then additionally, it should be multiplied by some noise so that it actually looks more interesting. And it's only going to happen where the cook value is bigger than 0. So that's why that's going to be good. So I'm going to use a noise texture. And let's run this through a field min-max. Finally, an easy way to normalize this bad boy. I really got to make that a node. Okay, min, max, go from 0 to 1, multiply, and then make that higher with more detail and more roughness, and then set shade smooth. Okay, that's already much better than it was. Let's turn off cavity. So before, after, and additionally, one issue you're going to notice is as we play this, the noise kind of stays still as this goes through it. Of course, that makes sense because the noise is looking at the something. It's just looking at space. It doesn't care about where the marshmallow is. So what we actually need to do is we need to take our marshmallow and store its initial coordinates. Either that or we could be lazy and we could like sample index over here of itself. But the reason I wouldn't want to do that is now we're doing it on every single frame instead of just saving it one time, which is so much faster. So I'm going to make a attribute called initial position because that's what it is. And then that can kind of be used almost like a UV map if you want to think about it that way. All that matters is that it's sticky. Okay. And since we're kind of happy with this, I think, well, we don't even need to bake it because that's handled by the simulation zone. And by the way, everything I do, I might move inside of here so that when it boils, that can affect how points hit it because then the proximity changes so that it should actually be inside the simulation zone. But that's fine. I'm going to make it only 350. And then let's re-simulate. And the material, of course, is going to be super simple because it's going to be black where the cook is high, etc. And remember, we're going to make it more interesting in that it's going to go up and down, which matters. It's not just moving it up and down. It's going to cook faster when it's lower. Okay. So, what did I change this time? I gave it position. So now, again, it's going to have this issue unless I take the attribute. That attribute's going to be our initial position. I connect that, and now you can see it stays where it's supposed to. Now I understand. I see. I'm not blind, okay? I'm seeing what you're seeing. We'll take care of that in a second. So let's blur. So that kind of smooths out that effect. We still probably need to make it a bit softer because that's still pretty extreme. So, multiply that by 0.5. Like it should be subtle. Like it should be over time that it cooks. Okay. And I think before we continue and implement new things, it's probably good to actually start making a material because that will dictate like what can we skip, what can we, or what should we improve, like what matters and what doesn't. So I'm going to take all of this. I'm just going to call this like boiling, even though a lot of it's just going to be goldening. And this set shade smooth can actually be inside of here. Actually, no. I changed my mind. And then inside of here, let's just clean up the situation. Initial position's never going to change. That's fine. Same with the cook. And in this case, there's actually quite a few parameters I care about. So I care about the blur iterations, not necessarily the weight, but just the iterations. I care about the noise scale, detail, and roughness. I care about the strength of this. And I think that's it. I'm having some serious deja vu right now. It just got triggered. Like I feel like I've made this before, which may literally be true, but I don't know. It's triggering something in me. No, let's keep that open. And we should probably name these. So the value is going to be the strength of the boiling. Iterations is actually the blur iterations. And then the scale, detail, and roughness are just like noise attributes. This is our initial position. It'd be really nice to get control of the snapping distance. As far as I know, that is not a thing. Okay. And now the reason I wanted set shade smooth outside of here is in this step, I'd also like to set material. And to me, these are kind of like post-processing steps that kind of belong together. So, and then all of this, I could keep for later. This is just for visualizing our points as well if we wanted to. Okay. The material is going to be called Marshmallow. And now we can start on that because it is applied, right? Yes. Okay, so let's see what we can do here. So very simply, I'm going to go to the shading workspace. Now we're in part 2 of this in a sense. And I want to bring in certain attributes. So the first attribute I want to bring in is our cook, which tells us how cooked is it. We're cooked, boys. I also want to bring in the initial position because we're going to need our UVs in a sense. And yeah. So let's make a color ramp that controls the color of the marshmallow depending on how cooked is it. And this, by the way, would be a good time to bring in our reference because we can actually sample these colors themselves. Okay, you ready? Good trick. You're going to hit E here. You're going to click and drag. Okay? Check that out. So now you have all of these colors. And to actually get them to show up, right now they're kind of concentrated down here because cook goes between 0 and 1, but it's kind of staying around 0.1. So let's do something like that. Okay, I'm going to set this to ease. Just kind of soften this a little. And I do feel like this is a little too limiting. Like the reason you're seeing these bands is because it's very quantized, which I do like the colors. I just want to have more gradient in between. Would B-spline do that for us? Not in this case because it's so intense. Okay, I'm just going to get rid of some of these. So let's just kind of zoom in here and see what it's doing. It's very important that the last few are black. Okay, now you're starting to see that smoothing, especially if we B-spline it. Okay, there we go. That's looking the way I want it to. And then we got to make sure the very end is like almost like literally black. Like that. And we can check that by just kind of doing that. Okay, and do remember we actually have quite a bit of detail here, which we can recover. So I'm going to put this through a principled BSDF. And this might be a good time to get some basic lighting. Again, we're going to use the particles themselves for light. That's going to be the fun part. Okay. Let's have this be our camera. And then let's light this bad boy. Oh, and when I do this, I talked about this in the last tutorial, I like to get rid of our world background. So we have just pure lighting. Maybe let's, or definitely, let's go into cycles, make a GPU. Great. And now let's play with this. So this one's going to be a bit different, and it's actually going to be pretty well lit compared to what I usually do. But I'm going to kind of emulate the colors that are ultimately going to be there, which is going to be some like red and stuff like that. Okay, so that's pretty good initial lighting. And then the next thing I need to do is I need to just add red or like fire coming from the bottom. So this one's going to be probably our brightest one with the red. And I want this to be pretty soft. And then in comparison to some of these other ones, I know we're getting messy. So we can call this our firelight. We can call this our, what's it called? Backlight. We can call this our fill light, which I'm seeing this is what I probably want to decrease. And all of this, what is this cube? Oh, that's the that's the thing we've been working on. Nodevember day 2 Marshmallow. Okay. And all of this can be our scene. Okay. So I want the fire to be quite big. Kind of like our main source of light here. Just like that. And I'm just going to play with turning some of these on and off. So maybe our fill light should be somewhat orange. You could also use temperature for that, you know, but it should be quite not intense. And maybe on that note, let's just make this pure white and use the temperature. Okay. Okay. So there we go. The reason this is looking like Play-Doh is just kind of like the lack of bump and stuff like that. Although what we could do is we could actually use its actual detail. So let's look at its ambient occlusion. I might need to compile those kernels. That looks like the case. Okay, I'm going to wait for that to happen. Basically, what I want to do is I want to accentuate some of these details that are lost, that are actually in solid view. This might crash Blender. Just waiting for the kernels. A default cube tutorial void. Please don't cut it. That's the reality, you know? Sometimes there's just nothing to say. And by the way, this isn't going to be ever, as far as, well, maybe. I don't think this is going to be edited into a tutorial. Like, it's just going to be a live stream. Even though I think it's pretty good, there's just a bit too much improv where I don't know what the result will look like. And I usually never actually, make it all the way to the end, but I like to just get a sense of what it's going to be. Blender is frozen. Video on demand. I misread. That's funny. Okay, this is definitely grounds to restart Blender. Usually it only takes like a minute. You're late. It's actually November 2nd. Wake up. Kidding. Okay, so now we are gonna compile the kernels, right? Okay, so this time I'm not gonna touch it. I'm just gonna let it cook, as it were. And what I'm doing in the background is I'm looking at camera tracker sales and the like. We could also look at Twitter together. This is my Twitter feed. Welcome. So I kind of go through this, and so I like to leave likes or hearts, but only on things I actually like. This is my previous post, by the way. Love it. Come on, I just want my ambient occlusion. Ooh. Like, what I hope is by liking these, the Twitter thing is going to give me better results in the future, because a lot of this I do not like. For example. Let's see. Twitter's so dead. Break with old habit. I mean, it's literally not. You were just seeing how Twitter is not dead. That's a boomer take. I'm sorry. Go use your Mastodon or whatever the fuck. Okay. Maybe at this point we're just not going to use ambient occlusion. Yeah. I give up. I believe I will need to restart Blender, though. I think it will still want to bring that to its finish line. Okay, so instead of ambient occlusion, I'm giving up on that. Let's try... Oh, don't tell me it's still trying. What's happening? I have my lights. Wake up. Okay, let's try one more restart. Usually I don't get issues with Blender, but if I do, it's with cycles. What am I to do? I think this is all correct. Okay, let's try cycling the render engine. Okay, this is seeming to imply that it's me. Yeah. How is that possible? Oh, is it because there's no material here now? That's what it is. Okay, great. Okie dokie. So, like I said, I like to get rid of the world light. Sheesh, that was a big loss of progress. And I guess instead of ambient occlusion, maybe let's try the next best thing, which also is super laggy, the pointiness. And if we really kind of crunch these numbers over here, so I'm talking like crunch it, like that, you're going to start to recover those details. Just like that. Okay. So we could do whatever we want with these. So for example, shimmy up. For example, I could multiply this in terms of color. What was that before? It was looking actually pretty good. Okay, wait. I'm going to multiply this in terms of color like that. Before, after. I mean, clearly that's better. Let's bring that up. Okay, I think that's better than it was. It's still looking super and that's because the surface sucks. So marshmallows are super rough. Like, there's no shininess in a marshmallow. I would even like say they're like pretty diffuse as well. Subsurface might be the way to go. Let's see what subsurface looks like. And actually, let's just make this our viewport now. Okay. What was I saying? Subsurface. Make sure to increase the scale is basically the distance at which light can penetrate. So if I make this bigger, yeah, now you're starting to see that subsurf. Although I don't know if marshmallows really have that much subsurf. I don't think they actually do. Like, it's a nice idea, but they don't actually. Where was I working? Here. Okay. Let's do the big thing. The big thing is bump mapping. We all know it. So noise texture, throw it in here. And now this is going to be mapped to it because of this initial position thing. And let's feel at liberty to use detail here. But additionally, what I can do is I can take this and only apply it to certain areas, or at least use it as a multiplier. So what I mean by this is we have our cook, right? And then I just kind of do that. And maybe I add a bit of a contribution. Just so that it's everywhere, but more so in certain areas. Like that. And that is going to be a bump map turning into a strength thing. I don't know why the distance is so low. I always set it to like 0.1 or higher. And is that better? It's hard to say. Let's multiply that by a big number. Yeah, that's looking crispy. I think it needs to be way tinier, like micro details. Okay, before, after. It's not really carrying its weight, is it? Okay. Specular is reflection. Like, it doesn't have specular, barely. It's like, here's the issue I'm running into. Like, this looks so much better as like a blah 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 as a viewport render, and I'm trying to figure out what I can do to capture that. Because right now, I think it's my lighting, but right now this sucks, and I'm aware. I'm not blind to the facts, okay? Okay, so what is this? This is our fill light. Yeah, it's just the lighting is wrong. I don't know exactly how it's wrong, but it's very wrong. I don't know. Maybe we do need just a bit of ambient light, which we can also hide by doing film transparent. Okay. Okay, now we're getting a bit of somewhere. I think we needed some ambient light. Okay, now we're kind of losing the plot here. Like, I really want to capture this. It's white, but some areas are burnt, and I don't have that at the moment. Like, this is good. Like, this part I like. It's just everything else around it that's shit. Diffuse BSDF. No. No. What if I run this through a hue saturation value? Can I recover? Closer. Closer. What if I, like, crank this? Really doesn't like that. Okay, okay, okay. Closer. I'm gonna bump up the displacement as somebody recommended. Sheesh. Sheesh, sheesh, sheesh. Let's add a geometry nodes. This is looking horrible. Okay, so we do have a boiling strength. And that's what has that detail, but it's just so, like, rough. Which, of course, you know, can be blurred. But maybe exaggeration's the way to go here. Hmm. Should be getting darker, I think. And maybe, okay, that's actually looking better. Okay, wait, we are getting somewhere. This is better. But it's, I don't know, it still kind of looks like plastic. I always do this on my renders to separate environment images. Da, 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 da. Mix that environment texture. So I understand the idea of HDRI, and I know that it just looks better, right? But that's not Nodevember. That's not procedural. I don't know if I count that. So let's just see what it would look like. So I don't know. You're roasting it in a cave. You're roasting it in here. Yeah, I can see that. I just want to be full prestige. That's important to me. Ooh. Ooh. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. This is just 100% a lighting issue. And don't forget, we do have these like particles that I'm not really taking advantage of. So let's see. We have these particles over here, and they can be embers. They can. I haven't been using them, but that might make the difference. So let's make another material. This one's going to be called ember, which I think should be literally as easy as a emission. As an emission. And make sure to transfer that here. Okay. Okay. That emission has to be red. And it has to be bright. And it has to be way less visible than that. Like I'm going to make it way tinier. But there will be motion blur, which is something to remember as well. Okay, so this needs to be way tinier. It almost looks like shit, doesn't it? Maybe I can kind of like call these based on distance or something like that. So let's see. If I take their radius, I make them big, and then I do some kind of curve magic to kind of only keep the big ones. I think that might help. Clearly. So I really only want to keep the biggest of them. I think that works. And maybe I can also like, whoops, I can maybe also make them like transparent a little so that they don't show up as much. What happens if I make it transparent with a color? No clue. Mix the two. Like that. Okay, I think it's probably important to try a render. So I'm going to do some motion blur. That's fine. The issue is there might be kind of challenges with motion blur because we're like culling particles and stuff like that. But we'll see. We'll see. So I'm going to do 100 samples. Yeah, it doesn't like that motion blur, I don't think. One way I like to test it is I take the motion blur and just make it crazy. No. Yeah, motion blur does not work when the index is changing. The only way we can recover this is we have to manually kind of bake velocity, which is fine. We can do that. it just kind of feels a little silly. So let me show you how to do this because it might be important. So if you're deleting particles, the issue is the index is always, always, always changing. So it can't store velocities if all of a sudden they pop and disappear or whatever it may be, like essentially teleport. So what we need to do is I need to make velocity myself. Fine, I'll do it myself. So I'm going to add a simulation zone. So the reason for this is I need to know its current position and previous position. Okay? So I'm going to take our points. I don't even need them in here. Let's store the position right there. And then the goal is to store a attribute called, I think it literally needs to be called velocity or it won't work. And that velocity is always current position minus previous position divided by how much time changed, distance over time. So divide by that. And then that is what I need to store. I need to store the velocity. And somehow I need to do it inside of here. But set position outside of here. This is going to be tricky. Okay, so the equation for velocity is fine. We just need to somehow store these. So on every single frame, I need to know what its position was. That's what that's storing. But then it doesn't come back. Doesn't come back. So maybe if we set position of that new iteration, I'm just spitballing here. I might be getting this wrong, but that's fine. So I'm basically looking at the points and the index, but that's going to give the same problem, wouldn't it? I think it would. So I have my points. I'm setting them to where they should be, but I also want to store the previous ones. This is breaking me. I know it's node soup, but that's how I think, at least at the moment. So I need to take the position before I do any transformation. So I'm going to store the position, and then I change the position, and then I subtract where it is minus where it was, and then store that as a velocity, which means I don't need this position thing in the simulation zone. And then this is the ember, maybe? And that is what I output. So let's think about that. What do we have going on here? So we have our points. Those points are then fed into... No, that doesn't make any sense. Does anybody know? Because the issue is they're still changing. So I somehow need a stable ID, which I can do. I can like save its ID, but then I need to sample the ID. So I save the ID. I might not know how to do this off the top of my head. Oh, you know what? You know what? I think I know what I need to do. Here is what I need to do. So our goal is to get the radius, right? That's the money. So the velocity. So what is the velocity? Well, it is the point movement. It's how much we moved it by. In other words, we already know the velocity. So if I can just store this as a velocity, and again, I think it's very important that I call it velocity because Cycles looks for an attribute called this and it tries to write an attribute called this, then I think we should be good. Okay. So we can test that theory very easily. The only thing, of course, is if I do all that, I need to make sure to rebake the simulation. Otherwise, it won't have that data. But I think in theory, this is fine. So far, 2 hours. Not bad, because we got most of the system working. Okay, so now each of these should have a velocity. Let me just get rid of all that noise. Each of these should have a velocity. That is something we can check by looking for a named attribute, again, called velocity. Great. For the purpose of this, I'm going to make the particles quite big. I'm going to set motion blur to a big number, and let's see what that gives us. I think that worked. That worked. That did work. The only reason that it's tiny, even though the motion blur is quite big, is I said this is the displacement. Well, I guess that's what it is. This is the displacement. It's not the, divided by dt. But that's fine because I can do it after the fact because I have a dt node. So I would then overwrite the velocity, although it's probably better to do it in there, but that's fine. I probably want to have a multiplier anyways. So that is going to be the velocity divided by dt, overwriting the velocity. And this should be fine even if points are deleted, I believe. So now this should be crazy big. There you go. Okay. So now I can set the... It's going to be a little glitchy when I render. But now I can set the motion blur to like a normal number like 0.5. Great. So that's working. And then it's just kind of like a game of like picking a radius that makes sense. Okay. And I wonder if even with that now I can delete them randomly, but I wouldn't. Like, I don't want to mess with a good thing. So we have that. We have our marshmallow. We combine them. And we render. Okay. Let's see what this looks like in the sense of compositing. So probably the biggest thing, of course, is going to be doing the glare. So let's see what that looks like. Yeah. To be frank, I don't like it. So maybe the best course of action is we do have these particles be like, you know, the ones that heated and all of that. But one big difference is we don't see them, and instead the light source beneath is going to be the thing flickering, because that's the main thing that makes it look hot, right? That fire. Yeah. Okay, and also another thing to consider is I haven't really given this much time to heat up. But it is kind of following normal rules. I think the only thing is I would take the diffusion, give it another iteration, and then also, you can see it's kind of quite faceted, even with the shade smooth, which I think is an artifact of us using pointiness. But another thing I would do, since now we have like a good system, is I would up the resolution. So I'm going to divide by 2. Divide by 2. See what this looks like. This is going to be high res as fuck. So much so that I'm lagging. Okay, how bad is that? Oh, it's only 1,000,000. I think it's just the calculation that's taking a long time. Okay, I'm going to bake this. It's going to take a second. Okay. So now that should be quite fast to work with. Okay, that seems to be the case. Of course, the only issue is now the bakes are going to be huge. Big boy bakes, but that's fine. Okay. So as a marshmallow, and we need to simulate this, but as a marshmallow, it's kind of like too saturated. But we can fix that later. Okay, so I have that. I want the diffusion to be a little faster, and the rest for the boiling I control outside of here. And I want it to run for longer. So I'm going to have this go 600 frames. And maybe another thing to consider is now we can have this moving up and down, which again matters in the sense that now there's going to be actual like heat dissipation. So the lower it is, the hotter it's going to be. And we can also add a stick that it kind of like melts onto, but that might be something I do off camera because that sounds like something that would take a moment. Okay. So maybe I also want this moving up and down. And to test that, I'm just going to output the marshmallow without anything else. This is only for the purpose of testing this idea of going up and down. Okay. So inside of our rotation, let's say that the noise texture also make a new noise texture. This one with a lot of offsets, it's not exactly the same. I'm going to take the X, Y, and Z randomization, but make it mostly a Z thing. So let's multiply by like 0.25 and then 1. That can be the translation, which we need to note it adds on every frame. Let's see. Oh, yeah. But now this person's moving it up and down, which is good. So I can do a overall scaling of this to say only do it like 15% as much. And maybe we should also, no, we do need to play every frame. That is too much. And then let me bake it somewhat, just so I can see what that looks like in real time. Okay. And then in this case, now I can have it skip frames just so I can see what's happening. Okay, that's pretty good. It's still like way too intense, so I'm going to make it like that. This should also be a parameter. This one can be called translation strength. This one can be called rotation strength. And maybe we could have it like tilt on the X and Z, but for now let's omit that. This is going to be called transform now. And let me do one more bake before I commit to actually doing the heat transfer and everything. The bake is now huge. Yeah, that's the thing. It's just so much dang geometry. But that's good that we're doing it on disk then, definitely. Okay. Sheesh. Sheesh. Okay, I need to reduce this just for a preview. Like one frame was 62 megabytes. Sheesh. Okay. Let's multiply this by 2, which will actually make it 8 times lighter because it's 3-dimensional. So let's bake. Okay, that was much faster. And now let's try baking the simulation. Okay, there you go. And then for the high-res thing, I'll make it high-res. Okay, so this was just for the motion. Yeah. So the only thing I would do beyond this is if a person's actually holding it, they should intelligently hold that. And what I mean is, I said this in the very beginning. I assume most people missed it. But if most of it's cooked except one side, it should be able to detect that side and rotate it so it's on the bottom, which wouldn't be that hard to do. We basically like average out the field of where it's cooked and map that somewhere on the cylinder. Okay, so that's where it's most cooked. We look at the opposite direction and then rotate it so that's facing downwards. Wouldn't be a big deal, but I'm not doing that right now. So we have all of that. Great. And maybe, just maybe, let's also add a stick. So let's say, and the stick doesn't, we don't really need to simulate anything with it, at least for what I'm going for. So I am going to join geometry with the cylinder, one that's very tall and very thin and rotated. And making it look good is a thing for another time. So more depth. Have it just kind of like that. And then the interesting thing is we need to transform this, but it's not like we use the noise. We use the noise additively as the simulation. However, what I can do is I can make a copy of this, right? We start off with our, we'll call this our like stick. That stick goes through the transform and goes back to itself. So now I'm going to use that. And this should not really add much time at all. Okay, so this transforms. What else does the transform do? That's it, right? So now these should move together, I believe. Almost. Almost. What is the issue? It's almost like it starts off at the wrong pivot point. Let's see. So this is our initial marshmallow. This is our initial stick. That part's definitely correct. Ah, we didn't include our DT. That is probably it. Okay, there we go. So now these are transforming together, and we can have them do certain things where they interact and like boils onto the stick or whatever. But that's fine. Let's try to do a tiny part of the overall simulation. So we have the marshmallow. It goes through here. We then include the points and the stick. And the points, we kind of scale down, but for now, let's actually just not visualize them. And let's do a few frames. So what I want to see is I want to see this boil. Or at least like respond in some way. Yeah, notice how we lower it, and then it instantly gets really hot. Yeah, and it's kind of charring the edge as it would, as you can see here. Because the particles kind of glide to the side of it. Yeah. Yeah, that's the money. That is the money. And let's see what's taking all the time. So this is running 90 milliseconds per frame. Actually, half of that is the boiling, which is interesting. Not even the simulation. Half of that's the boiling. And I assume, is the main thing just the detail of the noise texture? Like if I set this to 1, will it be faster? Yeah, that's major savings. What if I bring down the blur iterations? That's also quite impactful. So I wonder, can I set the blur to be a weight of 2? Does it accept that? Because then I can do half as many iterations, but each one spreads a lot. So, and you lower it, and boom. Boom. Incredible. And remember, this isn't just random. It's not just looking at what's beneath. It's actually calculating. And then the behavior of that, remember, is all dictated by this heat transfer, where we can make the distance threshold much softer or whatever, or like less intense. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, now you can see the heat's going on the side. Yeah. Yeah. So the reason it's looking dumb, by the way, is totally because of the pointiness. Yeah. That's nice. That's nice. Okay. So really the rest of this is, you know, turning it into a good render, having the stick, having the light flicker. That is stuff I'm going to do off camera because that's just kind of like prototyping or testing over and over and over again and looking at the renders. But as for the overall logic, I believe that is sound. I believe that is very sound. So like this could be a node group for the stick, which of course I'm going to make more detailed. Let's turn off the timings. So this, of course, I'm going to need to add some parameters to. Just going to clean this up a little, and then we'll go over what happened here. And also maybe clean up some. And this is one of those cases where bundles is super useful for like cleaning things up visually. I don't know if it actually adds any time. Like it would be a shame if it did, right? Like you add time just for the idea of organization. But dang it, would it be worth it? Maybe I don't need the actual points for an output. And I would say all of this actually qualifies to be inside the base marshmallow, don't you think? So this goes in there. Let's make the transform a bit bigger. Which means I can get rid of that. Well, welcome to seeing me live. It's still looking a little messy. Like, I know it doesn't matter, but it matters to me, doesn't it? Like, the only thing I can do is I can take these three and simulate a bundle, but that seems so stupid. But, like, I kind of want to do it. Kind of want to do it. Okay, I just want to see what it would look like if I did it. So I'm going to save, and I might totally undo this. So I'm going to combine a bundle. The bundle is going to include the marshmallow. I'm just going to set kind of like an empty thing for the points because it needs to start off as nothing. So let's just start off with like 0 points, just kind of dumb. And these could also be like renamed to embers or something, but. And then we have the stick. What did I do? Can I not name it like this? Oh, I can. That is the stick. All of that is a bundle. And the only difference is now I use its relevant thing. So for example, this is the marshmallow. And then for example, and then that can be compressed, right? And then for example, like this kind of seems like a waste, doesn't it? But these are the points. And then this is the stick. But then very importantly, I need to make sure to combine the bundle at the end. Or sorry, separate the bundle at the end. No, combine the bundle at the end so that it kind of loops over a bundle in the exact same order. Okay. Now, if we were to do this, what would that look like? That would look like us having the marshmallow. That would look like us having the points. This is so pointless. This is so pointless. I think it literally clutters it. But I'm going to go all the way through. So now I don't need the marshmallow points or... Oh, wait, no. No, don't do that. I don't need in the simulation zone, I don't need the marshmallows, points, or stick. I'm just doing a bundle. But then I need to once again separate the bundle. Where this gets the marshmallow. And this gets the stick. Literally makes it messier. And like not compatible with like 4.5 just for the idea of using a bundle. But there is something nice about only like a single thing going in and out. And I can also have DT be part of the bundle. That's tempting. That's tempting. Let's make DT part of the bundle. cgmatter.com for the node group. So now I need to resync all of these. This one gets its DT. Now it's starting to clean up a little. And one very important thing is I haven't actually tested if this works. Like I've done all this replacement, but it might just not work. Okay, that's looking nicer. His bundle obsession grows. I mean, there is something nice, again, about the simulation zone literally just taking a bundle. I know for some of you, this is organization heaven. Hmm. Hmm. then I can hide this DT. Okay. It's all coming together. Especially if I get rid of these named attributes. Okay. Oh, and I wonder, can I start off with nothing here? Because the points are empty anyways. It's still cluttered, but you can a bit easily follow the flow of data. Yeah, yeah. Especially if I like rename these, but right now I'm just gonna go for bundle. Because I guess I should show what it is that's coming out of it. This is the only part I'm not loving, this join geometry. But then if I put this above, move this bundle here, flip this, I just can't not have my node networks be clean. So clean. This is kind of like meditative to me. It's like, what is the smallest bounding box, the smallest like footprint that I can fit everything in while still making things accessible? Organizing node groups ASMR. That's exactly it. Well said. Well said. And again, I still haven't tested that this works. Just the existence of bundles have slowed down my workflow so much. I think that's about the best I can do without consolidating some of these node groups. And don't give me any ideas. This I don't actually need to see. Oh, I guess one interesting idea is I could totally feed in a bundle into the node group. That way it doesn't need to be as messy. But now, let's say I was to do that. Let's say I was to include a bundle. What would that look like? No, now it'd just be getting messy. Not even for function. Like it would literally be harder to follow what's going on. Whoops. But we know it's a simulation. No. That should be there. Oh, so good. And once again, I haven't tested if this works. Okay, let's test if it works. Pretty important. Okay, what do we got? We got our simulation zone. That needs to be baked. Let's try it. It's running. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Did I mess it up? No. How would I have messed it up? Oh, why did I do that? Is it because the points started out empty? There's no way it's that, right? Well, let's see what is included. Okay, we got our marshmallow. Oh? What's happening with the points? That, whatever that is the issue. And then the stick's fine. Okay, so the points aren't moving, therefore yada yada yada, right? So let's see. I take my points in here. That's fine. I do my spawner. That's fine. I do my DT. It must be the DT. That's the only thing it could be. I don't know why that would matter, though. Yeah, it's the DT. Why would it be that? DT is a constant, right? Yes. I thought you could combine whatever you want inside of here. Isn't that true? What if I was to use this DT over here? Would that matter? That works. Okay. I guess that isn't an option. If anybody knows what happened there, why DT can't be packed, let me know. Why am I doing this? Like, this project was done so long ago. Okay, let's move on. I feel like I just spent 30 minutes zoned out, which is fine. I mean, that's good flow. Can I reorder them here, but keep the logic? No, I can't. Although, maybe that is what I want. Whoops. So it goes stick, marshmallow, points. Stick, marshmallow, no. Stick, marshmallow, points. What am I doing? What's wrong here? I don't know what a bundle signature is. Stick, Marshmallow, points. Stick. What's the problem? Like, let's say I wanted this to be the thing. Would this be an issue? Stick, Marshmallow, points. Okay, whatever. I give up. I don't think it's a bug. I think I just do not understand. Okay, everything's synced up now. Good. Okay. Back to the plot. So we have our... Wait, what? Why? Stick. It was worth it, if you were wondering. Okay. What the fuck is happening? Oh, no DT. DT. There we go. And it's boiling. Oh, weird. So I think, unless I'm just not understanding this, I think there's still some bugs. Like, I don't know why it's flickering like that. Well, if it's an issue, I can always just revert. Oh, I got him inverted. Marshmallow here. Stick there. Okay. Then now, what is happening right now? Stick transform. Marshmallow transform. Why did I do this? I don't know. Marshmallow transform goes through the heat transfer. The points get called. I combine the thing. I do it again. I fucked up. Hopefully, though, it is in the recent things. Recover, autosave. So right now it is 12:56. Did I start this nonsense at 12:37? Is this version working? This version is not working. Ooh. Could I started it at 11:44? No, no way. This is peak stupidity. Can't believe I did this. Nope. And the worst part is, like, all of this makes sense to me. That's the worst part. Like, I don't even know what's happening, and I'm worried that either A, I'm missing something like deadly obvious, or B, which is worse, I'm doing everything correctly, and it's like still wrong. I think that would almost be worse. Okay, so the cook attribute's working. Okay. Therefore, this should be working. Unless. Let me just add something. Oh, that's fine. Oh, could it be the fact that I did a weight of 2? No. Okay, okay, okay. What does that mean? What does that mean? I don't know what it means, because now it just works. That's so dumb. So I took my cook, I blurred it, then I multiplied it with some strength that is non-zero, And then I multiplied it. So the issue is here. Which means it must be subtle. Okay, it's the initial position. That's not saving somehow. That is the issue. And why is that? Let me throw a bake at the very end here. Okay, so we've identified the issue. We're multiplying by a noise that's always equal to 0. But why is that the case? What's somehow like losing that attribute somewhere in the process? Initial position. Aha. Figured it out. I'm kind of cool in that way, spending 30 minutes literally obfuscating what I'm trying to do. Okay, so now if I resimulate, because this should now be baked, let's just make sure. And then I rebake some of the simulation. Doesn't have to be much of it. Ah, ha, 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 ha. Oh, that was so stupid. That was so stupid. But we got it working. And it does look neater for all that trouble. And I wonder if I could... No, I'm not. I'm not going to do this to myself. I'm going to do this to myself. What if I combine bundle with everything except the stick? And then I split the... then I separate the bundle for no reason. And then I combine the... No. This is peak stupid. Nope. Okay, we got it working. Now I just want to think, like, should I do the rest of this off camera, or is there anything obvious? One thing I'm thinking is we take the total cooked value, as in the accumulate field, and use that as a kind of like a crispy multiplier for everything. Because right now it's all local, but the heat diffuses through the volume of it as well, not just the surface. I think the thing is I just need to let it cook for longer. And then all will be well. Because right now I'm just kind of evaluating this based on like no amount of time passing. Yeah, I just need to let it cook for longer. Because honestly, this is quite good. In my very humble opinion. So humble. So humble. There's never been anybody more humble than this. Okay. That's what I will do. I'm going to let it cook, literally, for 2,000 frames. And that will be 10 gigabytes. if I'm correct on this. And this isn't even the high resolution version, so yikes. Bake to disk. And then after this, I'm going to wrap up the stream. Because 3 hours is how much I did last time. But I do feel happy about this. I'm going to be able to make the stick look good. I'll maybe make it look goopy near the end points of it, like where it's touching the stick based on the accumulation of how hot it is, so I can kind of cheese it. I can kind of fake it. And maybe there can be an overall deformation, again, based on that accumulation. Because right now, again, it's only local effects. Yeah, that'll be good. Okay, halfway done. Like, one way I could really speed this up is really call the number of points and control that intelligently, but I don't want to. This is gonna, I mean, I hope it would be good if by the end of this it's like burnt to a crisp, because that is a long time to cook. And I am about to find out. Okay. 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 And how big is it? Tell me. It is 6 gigabytes, 6.5 gigabytes to roast this marshmallow. Okay. Moment of truth. Starts like this, kind of crispy. Very crispy. Burned to a crisp. Okay, good. Very good. And again, the cool thing about this is I've done the simulation, I know what's cooked and what's not, and now I can control it after the fact. I think one thing that it's missing is kind of these like nodules that for some reason are gone. Like you see how there's like almost this like tumor going across it? I think I could have like a tumor map and have it revealed by this like cook thing. And that wouldn't even be too hard, would it? So let's see. I'm going to turn off cavity. And let's add a tumor map, as it were. So this is going to be some like light distortion. And then on top of that, I can add a Voronoi texture is how I'm going to do it, which will also add some crackles. That's good. So let's do Voronoi texture. If I'm just to add this, what happens? So I'm going to add Voronoi texture. Okay, we get something like that. So this is before and after. I'm going to invert this so it kind of creates these circles, at least is the idea. And then as I tighten this, you're going to see, you kind of see those tumors? The tumor map. Now, how do I want the tumor map to look? I can add some detail to the tumor map. Just like that. Could add some roughness to the tumor map. Then I can add some scale to the tumor map. Okay, so this is what it looked like before and after. So these are the crispy tumors. It's my responsibility to make them look good. It's really hard to see with the amount of char I have going on here. I think that's better. I'm going to have to improve the lighting to see. But I'm pretty sure that's better. Yeah. And I need these tumors looking a bit more crispy. Also, something interesting I could do is because, like, at this point, all I'm doing is I'm adding noise, and that's, like, basically limited by the amount of geometry I have, the resolution. Hopefully this doesn't crash. But if I add a subdivide in theory, yeah, before, after, uh-huh, uh-huh. Okay, that's what was missing. CG Matter, what book, subject, or course would you recommend learning before diving into geometry nodes? Coincidentally, I made a course with 80 level, which I haven't really looked into, like how many people have bought it or whatever. But 80 level CG Matter geometry nodes, I don't know exactly what it's called. Introduction to geometry nodes. I made literally an intro. I didn't write this description, but it's 5 hours from like nothing to beginner. So that's honestly what I would recommend. It's a bit pricey, I think. $55. That's not pricey, I don't think, for 5 hours, but I'm not the one buying it, so, you know. Easy for me to say. But yeah, that's what I would recommend. Which of course is biased, but that's my answer. It's almost like these tumors are too numerous. Maybe a good way to check is I only have the tumors. There we go. And one thing is because it's a Voronoi texture, we have per cell color. So that looks like this. What does it look like? Why is that not working? We have a per cell color that I can use to make some of the tumors bigger than other tumors. So what if I use this tumor map to control the strength? Yeah, so some tumors are bigger than other tumors. That's right. And could some tumors eat inwards? They could. I want to kind of shape this because it's too linear. Because right now it's just looking at the distance to the nearest Voronoi point. So if I just kind of go like that, I go like that. Okay. Those are some good tumors. When I think tumor, that's what I'm thinking. Okay. Okay. And maybe this is where we start doing our smoothing just a little. No. It's just that the tumors are too big. It's true. Sometimes the tumors can indeed be too big. Okay, that's great. So really the only thing stopping this from being full marshmallow is I feel like the lighting or whatever is like stopping it from actually like being visible. Like it's hard to see the depth of what's going on. Like this texture that I really like, that is not there. And I think it's because the lights are so diffuse, right? So if I make it like that, yeah. I just need peak tumage. Okay, so that's good to know. Stronger light, lower radius. Stronger light, lower radius. Well, in this case, I want it softer. And maybe a little more red. Okay, so I like how that looks. And then with the normals, zoom in here. Without the normals, with the normals, good. Good. Okay. Okay. So now is it really just playing with the gradient? It might be. Like, let's say I make this like black, you know, nothing to it, just pure black. I make it high contrast. I'm just looking for those tumors, you know? I'm tomb hunting. It's almost like I need to change how it's working. But this is pretty good. Maybe I can take this, and it's a bit of a cheat, but I take a noise texture, and then I multiply this map. So it's not just pure, there's just some surface inconsistencies. So let's see, before, after. Yeah, just, I mean, that's like a bit extreme, but I think you're seeing the idea. More roughness, more detail, less influence. Okay, so before, after. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, let's go further down. It's so hard to tell. I think the noise is a bit much. Like, it's kind of too influential. Just like me. 0.9. There we go. Before, after. And I'm starting to see that crisp. It really is all playing with the gradient now. And maybe just like before where I added detail with the Voronoi, let me do that here. So in this case, the Voronoi is really good for those like tumor patterns. Thank you, Cyclo. Okay, so I want to use the initial position as a map. So here, what you can see I'm doing is I'm trying to just get these circles like that. Like that. And somehow I need that to influence this. I don't know if it's an addition, a subtraction, a multiplication, but it's something. So let's think. Oh, oh, that's big actually. Actually, that's big. This gives it that like cellular pattern that I like. Okay, that's big. So now, don't want to ruin this. Okay, there's definitely something to this. Just like some kind of crackle or something. Don't know exactly what yet. I'll know it when I see it though. It's definitely something like that is what is missing. But it needs to be like a lighter influence. So let me like mix it. Before, after, halfway. Just tasteful. Just tasteful. And then this can be used for more. It can also be used as part of the randomness. Or sorry, the bump. Yeah. Okay. And let's remember it's looking this bright just because of the world. Oh! Oh! That's a lot better. And by the way, what you see on your screen might be a different, than what what I see on my screen. Okay, okay, okay. Major progress over the last 10 minutes. And I think one thing that's making it look weird is the stick I didn't, put any effort into yet. But this is like peak diffuse, like there's like no light there. Subsurface, just a little. No. Yeah. No. It usually just makes it look a little bit more like food. And I will say Chronos PBR is pretty intense on colors. So even like turning it to AGX kind of lightens the load a little. I'll go AGX. And I'll play with the gamma. Now remember, the beauty of this is that it's in the animation. I mean, look at that. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I'm very proud of this. I'm very proud of this. And what I can do beyond this, of course, is the light, the fire, should flicker, which I did yesterday for the thing. Now, yesterday, yesterday I found that this is a cycles only thing. So I'm going to use a noise texture, one-dimensional noise texture. This is going to control the emission. And then as I do the W, you see that flicker? You see it? That needs to vary over some amount of time. The issue is I'm not going to be able to really tell. Although that's not true. That's not true if I use a proxy here. Don't worry, I'm not, this isn't, it's going to be all notes is the point. Okay, there we go. Now I can see that flicker. Before it was 1, so I need it to average around 1. So noise is weird. It tends to hover around 0.5, so I'm going to go 0.3 to 0.7. And then since it hovers around 1, I'm going to go from 0.5 to 1.5. See if I can see that. Yeah. There should be a bit faster. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's get rid of that not procedural monster. Yeah. And then on top of that, if we want, we can like throw a multiplier. That's a little too red. Like honestly, it should be pretty bright. It's just about, I don't know what the numbers are, But there are numbers somewhere that makes this look correct. Yeah. Yeah. 10 out of 10. Thank you. Thank you. It's just not hitting those black regions, is it? And it needs to, but not everywhere. Not everywhere. And then with this, of course, I can tell already it's way too bumpy. And that's mostly a geometry thing. So luckily, is it mainly the Voronoi? Oh, not, or that's strengths for everything, isn't it? Yeah. Is it mainly the Voronoi? Kinda. Kinda. It's like I want them to be messy. Like that looks great, but not that messy. Is it the detail that's doing this? See, this is where it's hard to tell. Like, you kind of want to go extreme, but that might be the wrong choice. You know? And also, this subdivision is pulling its weight in terms of detail. But it's almost like, is there too much detail? No such thing. No such thing. And then maybe just one blur position. cgmatter.com for the notes. Just one. No, not even necessary. Now I got rid of most of the thing, and now I think it's now back to the material. Yeah, back to the material. Yeah, the noise contribution's a bit much. Easy. Bring that down. Yeah, it still adds something. And now it's the crispiness. Before, after. Yeah, it's something there. I don't know exactly what, but it's something. Let's look at the color. Yeah. First pass, second pass. So that, I think, is just objectively correct. Third pass. This is where it's a bit much. Then just that gradient. Just a little bit of give. I mean, I'm like so zoomed in here. Like, on the whole, sick, you know? Yeah, okay, it was a little too red. That's what it was. And then also on the geometry level, I feel like it's good, but I think the noise needs to be a bigger scale, maybe. Yeah, it's like almost like too micro detail. Sometimes you're often tempted to go micro detail, but sometimes you got to go macro detail. Okay. Oh, that initial. Oh yeah. I think honestly the only thing is it like rotates too fast or moves too fast. A good way to see that is just by looking at the stick. Let's see. Oh, maybe not. Oh yeah, I can go way too high. Whatever I do here, I gotta make sure to do to both. Okay. Watching a Marshmallow tutorial at 3:30. A little less noisy, people are recommending. Maybe. Maybe. Like, I feel like the amount of noise is good, but maybe, like, you know, how much I'm, like, blurring it isn't enough. Oh, did I get rid of the blurring? That had some good blur. Maybe that's what it is. Because these micro details can totally come from the material. Like, it's fine. And just, I know I like a while ago, I mean, this has been going on for a while, but I know a while ago I said like no points, and I think I will stick with that, but just to see. Because, like, in theory, I feel like it's a very cool thing. But I know some of them like pop and stuff because of the deletion. Did we still have that motion blur thing? Did I delete that? Let's see. I can't tell. In the point movement, did I still store the velocity? I did. I did. And we did have a special material for this, which I deleted. Yeah, like the points, I don't know. They're not like motion blurred enough or something. which is fine. Like, I can totally correct that by taking its, remember we made, well, you might not remember, I don't know when you came here, but remember we made this velocity that controls the motion blur. Okay, this is our first render, second render. Is there a difference? I think there is. There we go. Like, it's good and it's also bad. If I, one thing I'm not sure about, since we had all this issue with popping, I mean, like, it looks nice. If I delete them randomly, does that create popping? Delete geometry based on a random attribute, and that attribute can be like this. Oh, it doesn't create popping. Okay. I'm willing to reconsider. Yeah, like if it's subtle, right? So before, after, it's got to be subtle. And I know I did a totally different frame, but it's got to be subtle. Okay, all of this, let's make a node group. Point processing. Then let's just put that in the combiner. As for parameters, this probability needs to be there for sure. And then this motion blur should be here. And a good way to find the amount of motion blur is we just find a frame where this marshmallow is moving a lot. And just compare the two, because they should both be blurred. Really hard to tell, huh? Okay. Another thing I want to do, another thing I want to do is right now these points are being shaded all the same, but maybe I want them to be random. And I always forget which one it is. No. Point info. Yes. Yes. Point info random. I'm going to mix color to get like two different shades. Or you know what? I'm just going to color ramp, so I want some red embers. I'm sure it's dependent on the radius. which I have access to. But either way. So on one end, we're going to have orange. On the other hand, we're going to have red. In the middle, we're going to have yellow. And that goes to the emission. We see that. And then they can also have random strength. Let's just see what that looks like. Before, after, kinda. I think it should mostly be the color I chose, though. So I'm just going to mix color so that they're all at least halfway there. Connect. Before, after, close. Just more of that. Okay. Let's do some compositing and call it a day. And dare I add a volumetric? Just a little. Just a little. -5 to 5. Maybe let's make it bigger on the Y. Doesn't matter because the resolution's constant. It's the camera. Oh, that's fine. I mean, that's fire. You know what I mean. It's fire, but I don't want to lose all of that detail. So let's do 2 renders. One with. Let me actually get rid of the denoising. It's taking too long. So this is one without. And now this is going to be one with. And we're going to vibes. We're going to do a vibe test. The vibes are immaculate. It's necessary. Okay, let's finish up here. Final push. I'm going to put this subdivide inside of here. Final push, I say, as I organize the nodes. Like I organized everything else, you know? I'm not going to stop here. Like I said, final push. Last things I want to do is I want less points. I think the fewer embers, kind of the tastier. But because we have fewer, I feel comfortable brightening them. And let's do the comp. I always like my ambient occlusion. I don't think we're going to use normal, but just in case. And let's do one good render, since we'll use this for compositing. Pick a good frame. This'll do. Okay, this is our start. Okay, so first obvious thing is we're going to do that glare bloom. Gotta find the right amount. Pretty dark image. And I think it's fine. I mean, this is much, but it is fine to go a little hard on the glare because it is kind of like a supposed to be hot, if that makes sense. Okay, before, after, great. Since this is 5.0, there's been some presets, most of which I don't use, but one was noise, sensor noise, I like quite a bit. Drop the chroma, make it animated. This is just going to make it so that there's a nice little noise. Like, I like it. And now that I'm thinking about it, how dare I? How dare I not put some depth of field? I mean, this is an ember render. Let's go like here. What frame were we on? 1576. 1576. Depth of field or depth of schmield. And the reason we like depth of field in this case, for sure, is because of the embers. Okay, so here's kind of an exaggeration, right? You can see those nice embers. Okay, let's do 3 because we have the big bokeh. We could do whatever we want. Let's throw some anamorphism, but not that much. Blades? No. And maybe rotation? I don't understand how that works. Okay, so that's definitely necessary. What else? Oh, yes. I love my ambient occlusion. Although in this case, there isn't much ambient to be occlusioned, but at least there. So I'm going to mix color, ambient occlusion, and then multiply. So this is the before and after. And maybe let's kind of contrast up this ambient occlusion. We can totally use math for that. So, is that what I want, or do I want the opposite? Before, after. Before, after. Okay. That's nice. What else? What else? Lens. Hmm. Okay, that's nasty. A very light amount of vignette. Barely any. Sensor noise at the end. And now just basic colors. Oh, that's hot though. Dead hot. CG Matters on fire today. Thank you. Like, I definitely don't want to ruin this with like a black and white. I just want to see. That's nice though. That's nice. Just a little. Like 2% silly, but it adds something. Okay. Like, really the last thing to do is to play with settings and of course to change the stick. Like, I guess one quick thing, and then I am gonna call it, is I could try to Cheez-Its, with a metallic, as if it's like a metal skewer. It's lazy. It is, but I just want to try it. So this one is going to belong to the stick. So the stick gets the metal. And then the metal can just be metallic. So metallic, low roughness, high roughness. Definitely dark. And then really, you know, just thinner. And then some things where it connects. I mean, it's almost like the first one looks better. Okay, that helps. Some anisotropic. Make it a little brown. And then, yeah, like I said. Okay, that's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. I'm calling it. Let's clean up the files. This, I'm working on it, but this is going to be available at cgmatter.com. So let me open that up here. If you're not already a member, please do join. If you go to the website for free, you have the nodes, some of the ones I used. You don't need to be a member. You can just get that for free, get the add-on, and click download. And then if you want, there's a member site that has all the project files. So, recently I did that handwriting tutorial. So you have that there. But recently, and this hasn't been edited yet, but I have my Nodevember section, which is empty right now, but I'm going to add the files and the renders and everything. So you can get all of that. So become a member. That's the best way. I don't use Patreon anymore, so they don't get a cut. And yeah, I know somebody from the live stream joined today. I saw it on an email. So cgmatter.com. That is my plug. I'm just going to write it down here. There's also like a archive section where there's like project files for the last few years. So those aren't exactly indexed like these because the website's only like a year old. But yeah. So thank you for watching, everybody. I will take, last time nobody had one, so maybe there isn't one today. But if anybody has a question, I will take one, and then I will leave. So there's a 30-second, there might even be a 1-minute delay, so I'm just going to wait here quietly. What a day. Already like 4 hours spent on this, but it is almost done. The last one needed more work, but this one's almost done. So that's nice. Okay, we have a question. Thank you and have a good day with the stick. Thank you. Is the random node with a condition on there? If I understand what you mean, then yes. There are a few random value nodes that I made that are a bit unique. Many of them are just to get a constant instead of a field. So, yeah. Thank you for watching, everybody. I'm going to